Okay, hi everybody. So I am, for those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Dawn of Sarah Dawn's Designs, and I do accessible crafting. The way I'm going to work this is, if you have questions, the slides are basically mostly just text bullet points that talk about. I can jump into more detail on something if you've got any questions or you would like an example. I do have one example prepared that I'll show you sort of what I mean by adapting techniques. And again, if you've got anything else you would like to see or you want me to delve into, or I can go find web links, feel free to kind of interrupt. I don't mind kind of going off on a tangent because that tells me people want to know more. Yay. So what is accessible crafting? At its very, very core, it's, yes, you can make that. It's recognizing the barriers you have to crafting and working around them in whatever form that takes. That can be things like, oh, this is just not for me, or that can be, oh, I need a different tool or a different technique. One other, sorry, as I got distracted, one other housekeeping thing. If I'm speaking too quickly, just let me know. I'm a fast speaker, so just let me know if you need me to slow down.
I would slow it down a tiny bit, Sarah.
Okay, perfect. So that's the idea of accessible crafting. It's what's the reason I can't do this or think I can't do this, and what do I do about it? The first point is the social barriers. So this can be, oh, you're too, insert descriptor here. Too tall, too thin, too big, too insert descriptor to knit or crochet. And you get that a lot. That also is someone like you can't knit. So you hear a lot of men being told that men don't knit. You get a lot of, again, as someone with a disability, I've gotten people, well, people like you don't knit. All these voices are lying. They are not true. But the social pressure of only certain types of people knit or crochet or craft is a strong one, and you have to learn that these voices are lying. Like, there's nothing else. There's no other way to say that. The other one is the lack of access to accessible spaces, online and offline. Yarn stores without steps, again, conferences without captioning. There's, like, I could keep going. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with that kind of idea, but that's the other issue around accessible crafting is, and the social side of things is, can you get in to the places where the crafting is happening? And by in, I mean both physically in the building and also access to the community as a whole. So when you are looking as a crafter for getting involved in crafting, you want to look for venues that post their accessibility information. If they're posting their accessibility information, it means they've at least done a nominal amount of work on it. So, and it also means there'll probably be someone to ask any questions. I've had good luck with that. I find that if a venue is posting about wheelchair access and accessibility information, then usually they're pretty good. And also it usually means there's somebody, again, that I can ask specific questions if need be. You want to look for patterns that have large print or other accessible options. Shameless plug here, most of my patterns have both, and I'm working on getting all of them that way. You are looking for patterns that offer wider size variations. So this doesn't just include the many varieties of human sizing, but also things like if you're a wheelchair user and you want to customize the front and back so it sits properly, or if due to your disability you are outside the quote unquote, I hate the word, standard range of human sizing, you've got a pattern that will support that. And then you have tutorial videos with captions, because that's a thing. And you also have tutorial videos with describe video, which is something that I'm working on right now. So those are the things you can look for as an immediate, easy, here's a good checklist to start with when you're looking for accessible crafting. This also can apply to other social barriers that are not directly disability related. Things like, does your festival offer childcare? What's the cost of admittance? Do you have a harassment policy in place? And all sorts of other things that you can look at to see how accessible and welcoming a venue is going to be. Next one is alternate techniques. This is the knowledge and ability to substitute one technique for another. If one technique isn't possible for you, don't beat yourself up. Just go ahead and sub something else. This does require a certain amount of knowledge of, like, this cast on is stretchy, this one isn't. So there's going to be some trial and error. But if you do find the technique, you're just like, I can't do this, this is not for me. Online research is your best friend. It is perfectly acceptable to sub techniques. You will see some people going, no, you have to do it as written. You don't. I don't think I have ever done a pattern exactly as written, ever. Because there are some techniques that I'm like, I can't do that. That's not going to happen. We're doing it this way. So alter as you need or desired. That also applies to things like you can add longer sleeves, you can make a sock cuff longer, you can anything that you need to do, you can alter as you want to. You are not bound to a knitting pattern or a sewing pattern or a crochet pattern. If you are a beginner, I do recommend at least starting with the pattern, but no, feel free to play with it. Feel free to experiment with it and see what happens. Less so with sewing, but more so with knitting and crocheting. You can rip it out. You don't have to worry about that. And here, I'm actually going to show you. I'm going to have to do a very brief setup, but I'm going to show you what I mean about just different ways of doing things. This is so I'm going to be winding yarn. I'm just going to do a little bit just to show you folks. So we're going to go. I got to mash the buttons on Zoom and hope I get this right.
Just while you do that, I'm going to just highlight that we have swapped interpreters. I'm going to momentarily swap over the spotlight so people can find the lovely Holly.
This.
So 1 second. I'm going to take you off spotlight a second.
That is perfectly
Sarah.
fine.
Okay.
Find my scissors anyway.
The lovely Holly. So people that need to pin her, pin ahead. There you go. All right. I'm now going to put Sarah back on the spotlight.
So this is yarn winding. So what we've got here, this is yarn winding, yay. This is the second skein of yarn for a pair of socks, which I'll actually be working on the socks later today. But I'm going to show you this very briefly. I just have to take it out of the skein. I didn't want to do that before this because that's a major tangle risk. Okay. But what I'm doing here is I'm going to be winding up this yarn. And I'm going to be winding it using a tool called the Nullstipinner. Oh, I've got one more tie. Apparently failing at untying the skein, but that's okay.
Sarah, what was the name of that tool you used, sorry?
A Nullstipinner, and I'll show it to you in a moment as soon as I fix my tangle. What happened here? Oh, I see. Okay. I've derailed myself a little because I have a small tangle, but I can...
Can you spell that name?
Yes, I will type... It's... Okay, my keyboard is covered. It's N-O-S-T-I-P-I-N-N-E. Now I have a yarn end that has mysteriously gone.
Thanks, Viv.
There it is. Okay. This is occasionally what happens when you do not. Success. Okay, there we go. Now I got my tabs. So I'm going to show you what I mean by talking about doing things in alternate ways and, you know, deal with it basically. So when I was taught to use an Nullstipinner, the woman who was teaching me showed me how to do this. And for the most part, it's quite nice. So you take the yarn, you lock it in to the little notch here, and then you just wind a couple turns like that. Now, this is the easy part. Now you start winding at an angle, like so. There's a number of reasons why you'll use this tool rather than a standard ball winder, and you can definitely use a ball winder if it suits you. But when I was taught, and I can't show you this because I can't do it, the woman who was winding managed to somehow both turn the Nullstipinner this way and wind the yarn this way at the same time. This defeats me. So I will do instead some turns and then turn the Nullstipinner and then wind again. I keep it level. But a lot of people will tell me you shouldn't use a Nullstipinner that way because you're supposed to, and I use the term in quotations, you are supposed to turn the Nullstipinner and wind the yarn. I can't do that. So as I said, I kind of eyeball that. I usually do about 7 to 10 wraps at an angle around the Nullstipinner. Then I turn it a little bit more, and I do another 7 or 10 wraps. And then I turn it a little bit more. And then I keep doing it this way instead. And you know what? It works perfectly fine. Yes, it is the patting head and rubbing tummy problem, and it defeats me. But yeah, I've had a couple people go, "You're doing it wrong." I'm like, no, I'm not. And that's what I mean about adapting techniques. If something doesn't work for you, do it. Find another way to do it. Now, again, I'll make the note of if the Nullstipinner doesn't work for you, there's also like the cranked ball winders where you can just turn a crank and it will wind the ball that way. So there are always options. But if anybody ever says you're doing it wrong, it's actually very unlikely you're doing it wrong. So hang on, I'm going to jump back to the presentation now. So if you'll give me one moment. But that's sort of my example of what I mean about you don't have to do it a certain way. Now I have to take this and put it down because then I have access to my keyboard. There we go. I need to also switch my camera so that you're seeing my face and not the keyboard. There we go. Come on. There we go. All right, so this is the presentation. So yeah, when it comes, the next point is alternate tools. I showed you the null dependent. There's a bazillion different tools. You will see many, many tools. Tools make a difference. I think I have the story of this in here. So style, materials, and ergonomics are the three things that I would really consider looking at when you're looking at like what tools work for you. So style. By that I mean the style of some tools will lend itself to specific techniques. For example, 9-inch circulars. I don't have a pair. I hate them. They are, do I have a pair of circle needles I can show you folks at hand? I do. If I can, actually, no, I don't. They're not in reach. Okay. So you'll have to forgive me, that is my roommate's phone going off. So basically what happens is there's a number of different ways to knit in the round, a la circular needles, like this. We'll just sort oh, there's a yarn tangle. Yay, yarn tangle. But like this is a knit in the round. It's kind of got fluff on it because the cat's been sleeping on it. But this is a knit in the round. And so here I'm using double pointed needles. There is also 9-inch circulars. So a circular needle is, many of you have probably seen them. They're the needles with 2 tips and a long cord. And the cord varies between 9 inches to 60 inches and even longer. 9-inch circulars are incredibly tight on the hands. I hate them, but other people love them. But the style of your knitting changes on 9-inch circulars versus if you're using Magic Loop or double pointed needles because the needle shape is different. So that's the first thing you want to consider. Materials, wood versus metal. For example, I started my crochet life with metal crochet hooks, and my hands cramped. And it wasn't until I switched to wood that all of a sudden my hands stopped cramping because they were lighter. So it makes a difference on the warmth, it makes a difference in the feel, it makes a difference in the grip. And some materials are recommended for certain, again, like for certain types of disabilities or for certain conditions, etc. I hear a lot of people recommending Cassian knitting needles for folks with arthritis. I also hear people recommending bone crochet hooks for folks with arthritis. I can't speak to that. I don't have a bone crochet hook, so I don't know. And then ergonomics, many tools come with various ergonomic features. Again, there are crochet hooks that have like shaped handles. There are knitting needles that have grips. So you can also look at any of that. And it's going to be a lot of trial and error because it is, as always, the whole what works for one person doesn't work for everybody. But there's a lot of different options out there. If your local craft store has it as an option, see if you can try out new tools. Many craft stores will have like sample knitting needles or crochet hooks that you can try out. This is, of course, you know, when you're permitted to go out. Please don't do this right now. If you can't, if your store doesn't have that, see if you can borrow them from a friend, because that's definitely another option. Especially, I've had situations where a friend just loves tools that I'm like, I don't like these, and I've just given them to them because I'm like, you really use these, go ahead. There are finally less common tools. There's a Nook that has a link. It is a crochet hook that has a long tail with yarn attached to it. It's used for Tunisian crochet. It's also used for its own style of crochet, like a hybrid of crochet and knitting. I've also seen people knit on it though. Or a peg loom, which is, I'm going to actually switch out and Google an image of that for you folks because I think they're fascinating. So we're going to go.
I have one.
I'm just going to swap over interpreters just while you're having a look at that picture.
I have a peg loom.
Oh,
yes.
Ellie has a peg loom.
I'm using a loom at the moment.
Perfect. Then you folks are ahead of me. So yeah, there's a piece. This is our, come on, load. Internet. Here we go. So there is an image of the peg loom. I'll pull up the full image if it will load on me. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I wanted the image.
I have one in my hand at the moment.
Oh, hey. Okay, so I can't see who said that.
Yeah,
It was me.
also have one.
Yeah, so you folks are familiar with peg looms. I'm trying to get the image to actually load. Open image in new tab. Let's see if this does it. There we go. Success. There's also circular ones as well. And these are definitely another option if you find manipulating knitting needles or crochet hooks just not within your range of motion. This is definitely another option as well. All right, I'm going to jump back to the presentation. I'm going to close the various... No, don't do that. Present. There we go. Okay, my internet's being a butt. You folks might lose me, to which I do apologize. So my personal tool set is turn-of-the-century knitting needles and crochet hooks. They are wooden knitting needles and crochet hooks made by a U.S. artisan. I'm pretty sure he ships to the UK. It will just take a while to get there. And then for circular knitting, I prefer Haya, which is a specific brand. Longer circulars with a longer cord. And for smaller things, I use double-pointed needles, usually metal ones. But the biggest consideration is on tools is what works for you. What's the best for you? And yeah, it can be a little hard to find that. You will have to do some trial and error, which again is why if you can do it, I strongly suggest like borrowing or trying them out, but from a friend or from a local shop before you buy, because you don't want to end up buying something, of course, that doesn't work for you. If that's not an option, you can see about online retailers and see what the return policy is, because that's another option. If you don't like it, see if you can return it. So yeah, basically that's it pretty much. If you've got questions, feel free. Twitter, you can find me on Twitter, Sarah Dawns, Ravelry, Sarah Dawns, or just email me. It's sarahdawnsdesigns@gmail.com. Because this is what I do. So if you have specific questions for yourself, feel free to contact me. I am a believer that anybody can do this. It's just finding the right tools. So that's it. Questions! Yay, success!
Yay!